Hey there, it's Cassie back with another Trinity Stamps video. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to be making a fun winter slimline card, so let's talk about the products we're going to be using. This is the Seasons Tweetings stamp set. It has its matching die with it. We're also going to be using the Happy Snowman die, but we're not going to be making a snowman. I wanted the not so perfectly shaped circles for the card I'm going to be making, and you'll see where that comes in, but it was perfect for it. We're also going to be using the Slimline Woodsy background. Love that because it fits perfectly on a Slimline card. We also have the Marshmallow alphabet, which I just think that is just makes my heart happy. Then we have an array of cardstocks here, so let's go ahead and get started with our stamping. I'm going to take some Neenah Desert Storm cardstock and put that into my Misty, and then we will put the Slimline Woodsy background right over the top of it, close the door of the Misty, and then we're going to really make sure that we push that Neenah Desert Storm cardstock into that lower right-hand corner. This will ensure that if we need to restamp, we can easily do that. And so I'll ink that up with some Twiggy Brown Ink on 3 ink. Push again in the lower right hand corner just to make sure that it stays there, and then I'll stamp that down. And it's a good thing that I did push because it does need to be re-inked, so I'll use some more of that Twiggy Brown, push into the lower right hand corner, and then re-stamp, and then we have a perfect stamped impression of that Slimline Woodsy background. Love it. Alright, so here's where I'm going to bring in the Happy Snowman die. I'm kind of lining that up, and I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. It's going to make it look like there's a little hole in a tree. And I love doing stuff like that. It's like this cute little scene. And then we're going to stamp our Seasons Tweetings birds onto some Express It cardstock using some Ink on 3 Blackout ink. That's quickly becoming one of my favorite dark inks or black inks to use with Copic markers. So I'll stamp that a couple times. And I like it because it does dry very quickly. I have some cardstock cut down to 7 inches by 8.5 inches, and I'll score that at 3.5 inches. This is going to be our card base. So while it's closed, it'll be 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches. I'm going to put this into my Misty. It'll fit just fine in there. Looks like it doesn't, but it does. And then while I've got my little Seasons Tweetings birds out, I'm going to position those up a little bit further. We'll ink that up with some Trinity Teal ink by Ink on 3. I used a little too much ink. Thankfully, it didn't pass through the birds. And then I'm going to grab out a couple of sentiments from that stamp set, and then we're gonna just position those on there. This way I've got the inside of my card all taken care of. We'll ink that up with that Blackout ink and then stamp those down. Now we'll move on to our coloring. I'm going to put the colors up on the screen the best I can. We're going to make some little blue birds. We'll start with some BG15. I typically like to color from lightest to darkest, and I figured since this was going to be a winter card, we'd have some cute little winter birds. Little winter bluebirds all bundled up with that adorable little, it almost looks like it's a scarf, I guess, or a little blanket. But how cute is that? So we start with the BG15, and then I'm going to come in with some BG49. I do miss their little bums. I'll come back in later on when I realize that I've missed those, and I'll color those. But now I'll come in with my BG49. I'll put a little bit of shadowing and shading. You'll notice I don't always go to the edges. That kind of gives the illusion that it's a rounded image. And so that's my coloring style. And then I'll just use a lot of flicking motions with those darker colors. You could go even darker and add a third color in there, but I'm just going to stick to these 2 colors. And then I'll bring in that BG15 and blend that out just a little bit, and then I'll come back in with the BG49 and just put a little bit of just some darker areas. You know, not real drastic or dramatic, but they're there, and I think those little birds are just too cute. After we're done with that, we're going to move on to their beaks and their feet. So we have YR2, 3, and their little feet are nice and tiny, so I'm just using the tip very, very carefully. And then I'll come in with some YR2, 7, just to add a little bit of shading there. I am going to bring in another color here in a bit for their beaks, and you'll see that, but it's going to be using some painting. All right, for our red little scarf, we are using R29, and you'll notice with this one that I'm not going all the way to the edges of things. If you are unfamiliar with using Copic markers, or if you're fairly new to it, I will just tell you that the reds bleed very, very easily. I'm not sure why they do, but when I am going to layer things up and I have tiny little areas, I usually leave a lot of white space because it just they bleed so quickly and they'll go outside of the lines very, very easily. I'm not sure why, but they just do. And having worked with these for so many years, I've just learned these little tricks. All right, so then I'm going to come in with my next darker color, which is the RV69. And I'm just adding just some little areas where I think there might be, where it'd bunch up a little bit, so that it adds those dark shadows there. And then when we get between the little toes, I will start pushing all the way to the edge. You'll notice it does bleed a little bit. And then I'm going to fix the rest of that with that R29. I'll bring that back in, and then I'll fix all those areas where there's a little bit of white. I just didn't want to put all that color down to start, because I knew that if it got oversaturated, it would bleed all the way into their feet too much, and I just did not want that look. So we're just fixing that now, fixing all those edges, making sure there's no white space there, and I'm using the very, very tip of my marker for this. All right, so then we're gonna, at this point I realize I missed their little bums, and so I'll color those in using the darker of the blue greens that I had chosen. And then we're just using this easy E23 for the branch. I didn't add another color. Here's where I want to add some gold. So this comes from the Trinity Gold palette that was released a couple months ago, and I just love this little palette. You can't really tell that it's there right now, but in the light it will add this beautiful gold shimmer. And see, oh golly, that's just so cool. And you can do that with any of those colors, which is super fun. I'm also going to add it to their beaks and their feet just a little bit, not a lot, just a little, so that way when it catches the light you'll see that beautiful gold shimmer. And I'm obviously not using a ton of water because this is not watercolor paper, but I do want to use some splatter now. I have been just obsessed with splatter. I mean, I've always been obsessed with the splatter, but recently I have been going to town. So I'm just adding water with a tiny paintbrush and splattering that all over my card panel that's going to go on the front of the card. And you can't even see it right now, but when I bring that out and show you in the light, it's got these beautiful, just little speckled gold all over the tree, which I think is so cool. All right, now we're going to pull out the matching die for our Seasons Tweetings, and we'll run that through our die cutting machine. I suggest using some washi tape or something to hold that down so it doesn't get shifted. After all of that coloring, the last thing you'd want is to mess up your die cutting. I've got a scrap of some white cardstock, and I am going to grab that Trinity Teal, and I'm going to do some ombre ink blending onto this white cardstock. My plan was to use this for the Marshmallow alphabet letters. So I've got a really nice ombre effect going, and then we're going to take the letters B and R from the Marshmallow alphabet, and we'll run that through our die cutting machine. I just need one B, and then I'm going to use a couple of R's. These little birds are cold, so I mean that's why they have their darling little scarf around them. And then I thought about a third one, but I thought 3 was plenty. Give that rule of 3 letters there, which I thought was nice. And then I'll just take some black cardstock, and I'm going to stick that onto my card base. I'm going to put that directly on the card base using a little bit of liquid glue. For the next part, I'm just kind of deciding how I want the panel to be down. You could very easily put this up on some foam tape to add a lot of dimension, but it's a Slimline, and I'm going to add some dimension by using some little pearls later on, so I figured this was good enough. And then I'll just put a little bit of liquid glue on my birds, and we'll just tuck that kind of behind the panel as much as we can, so it looks like those little birds are just sitting on a twig inside that little hole, and they're propped out a little bit there. So then I'll put some liquid glue on our letters, and we'll put those down. I'm going to start with the R so that we are flush to the edge. That way I'm not guessing. The next R, and then the B. And then the rest of our sentiments are on the inside, which is fun. All right, so here's where I'll pull in those Something New embellishment mix. They're little pearls. Really beautiful little pearls, and then I'll use my crystal katana along with the tidy tray, which is holding all of the little pearls, and some liquid glue to stick those down. And I just put a few on there, and that's where our card is finished. I love the front, it's so pretty, and then you can see that gold just shining. This cold weather is for the birds, sending warm winter wishes. So if you liked this video, go ahead and hit that like button and consider subscribing if you have not already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Bye everybody.